We're getting good at this.
We are
Well,
getting good at this. That
it was
only took
like,
2 tries.
well, for me, it was the first time it was seamless. Uh,
Seamless. Well, that's great
once
news.
I loaded
How are you today?
Instagram, it started going much better.
Hmm.
I'm
How
good.
are you
I'm
today?
good. Yeah, I'm good. I probably less busy than you've been today.
I-
You're everywhere
I've been
today.
pretty busy, yeah. A lot going on. And, we do have a new pope, but at the risk of making a slightly risque joke, on the note of other things that are slightly glowy and have halos, we also have big news today in the film world, which is Kentmere Pan 200 to talk about. It's a good thing that came out because we had nothing
Yeah,
planned.
that's true. Yeah, we boldly just organized this and we said, we'll figure something out.
Yeah,
Um,
we'll wing it. But,
I mean,
Ilford
I'm
Kentmere came to save us.
I'm utterly amazed that you were able to be included in all of the marketing material for this product at such short notice that it was only released at 1 o'clock, and by that stage, you already seem to have
I'd
photos
already
everywhere.
shot 4 roles
Yeah,
in London, Dunleary, the Isle of Skye, various
yes,
other places. Yeah,
yeah,
I did a lot of traveling today.
yeah. Good, good. Um,
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on the film?
well, I mean, I shot a couple of rolls of it in 35 on that Ireland Analog Dublin Street Photography Festival walk last weekend. So the FM2
Mhm.
was great. I did a load of stuff with 35mm lens, bit of kind of architecture stuff, less portraits than usual. And then
Okay.
later on, so I like them. It's not the stuff I normally take, but I just wanted that kind of something a bit graphicy, a bit different. I sort of didn't
Yeah.
really know what to expect with the film. I'd obviously seen just a sneak of what you were doing. With
Yeah.
some of the other marketing material. So I had a sort of a sense of the contrast. So I taught buildings and stuff. And I shot another roll of it using flash on my Mooj, and I done some kind of nighttime stuff. And
Mhm.
the glow, the lack of the anti-halation layer, like this isn't just a bizarre 200 speed film fitting between two gaps. There's actually, from my point of view, there's something here to get just a little bit excited about.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
wouldn't,
I've seen a few people questioning it and asking, what's the point, basically? And I
yeah,
didn't want to
yeah,
be so blunt in my video on YouTube, if anyone wants to have a look, Shaka1277. But, I can definitely see that reaction. I knew it would happen, and I have seen it today. People asking, I can just push 100 or I can just
yeah,
overexpose 400. But that's the difference. None of the Kentmere films, none of Ilford or Harman Technologies films have an anti-halation layer in 35mm at all, actually. But they use a different base material for different films to define whether or not they have halation. And Kentmere Pan 200 uses the same clearish acetate base, the low density acetate base as Harman Phoenix 200. So that gives you a lot more liability towards halation, even without using a polyester base, which has its
yeah,
own pros and definitely cons as well.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so it's a bit more unique, and it's not just a Kentmere with a different number on the
Yeah.
front.
So, I mean, my personal history with the Kentmere stuff, like if you kind of went back, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, I was
Mm,
shooting Tri-X and like for context here, Tri-X was a lot cheaper. But when I had some
yeah.
money, I was shooting Tri-X, and for everything else, it was Kentmere 400. So I've shot over the years, I've shot a huge amount of it. Some of
Hmm.
the criticism and that kind of stuff around the lack of contrast, I'm going to say it's a sort of a dev issue for a lot of people, or an agitation that there's. I mean, this was a conversation we had at the weekend with Laura as well, because she's shooting a lot of that. So there's a thing there where I kind of went, yeah, but I can already get contrast out of the Kentmere, the sort of the lower end studenty film. I never viewed it as that. I
Yeah.
just viewed it as a sort of a decent quality controlled film. But when I shot the few rolls of this, like immediately when I took them out of the tank, I thought, yeah, this is nice. Particularly the indoor stuff at night with flash. I don't do a huge amount of that.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
my Mooj, obviously the DX coding on the canister was a big, because I really don't like to overthink this when I'm out with the point and shoot. I
Oh, I
want
can
to
tell
point and shoot.
from all the pictures of me on my phone.
Yeah, this type of thing. So it's. I like it. It's good, and the glow, even with the flash, the few portraits and stuff that I done with it, that kind of fill flash bouncing back off of people. I think it's actually very pleasing. I think it's a very flattering light coming back off the people, and that's done well on the film. So it's not quite at a pro mist level because it's
No,
obviously
and it's not as strong
still
as something like FOMA Ortho 400, which can be, especially in 120, can be a bit extreme.
yeah, yeah.
But it just adds a tasteful kind of glow to a lot of
Yeah,
pictures.
and the contrast, I'm calling it high contrast. I mean, we're both, we like our ortho. I like
Yeah,
my film both black and white.
yeah.
And I found this was nice buds with I leaned a bit heavier into the medium format stuff. I went out with the Fuji GW 690 and the Orbi 67 just with a view to
Hmm.
shooting the bigger neg because I wanted to print it. Um and have a look at that. And I was in kind of a fairly dim forest with light coming through the trees. So I kind of have
Okay.
this speckled highlights in
Like
green undergrowth.
your God
Jesus.
rays coming through.
Yeah, yeah. So it's lovely, and that glow coming back off of the stuff, sort of a vibe of the ortho with IOR
With the panchromatic
almost.
sensitivity.
With the
Yeah, because you've got the red
yeah. So
sensitivity in there.
I'm looking at this and kind of going, I'm sort of excited to go back out and use a bit more of it in that. And
Yeah,
I have a lot of Delta 100 and other premium uh film I could be using instead. And I'm definitely thinking, yeah, a brick of this.
could do very,
Um,
very well. Yeah.
but
Before we
I'm
go any further, I'll say to
yeah.
other people that we are going to stay on for another 15, 20 minutes or so. If you have any questions about the film or anything related to it, drop them below and we'll answer them soon or later on. And Jan just said, just watched the video, great review, matches his experience with the film. Very happy with the increased contrast. Yeah, so something I touched on in my video was that a lot of people, like, and you mentioned it already, Brendan, is a lot of people will try and get more contrast out of Kentmere Pan 100 and 400. So very briefly, I guess, the Kentmere line of films are a more budget-oriented line of films and darkroom papers that have a lower silver content in them because silver is the most expensive part of making a film or paper for the most part, especially black and white. It's a precious metal, it's a limited resource, and it is expensive. It's something people trade as a commodity material, so it's not that cheap. So they basically found a way, Harman Technology, to make decent, like pretty good quality films and papers that don't reach the tippy top level of performance, but aren't trash by any means. And they're certainly better than a lot of other budget films in many measurable, quantifiable ways, opinions set aside. But while maintaining that most of that quality with less silver in them. Um, and this is one of the things that results in the slightly reduced or relatively reduced contrast compared to the likes of FP4 and HP5, Delta 100, Delta 400. And it does have that cubic range structure, so it is closer to FP4, HP5. And even HP5 is notoriously a very flat film, but the
Mm.
Kentmere films are considered quite flat as well. The Kentmere 200 somehow has quite impressive high contrast. Owen says there are contrasting views of this film. Haha. But yeah, anyway, the
Uh,
film is quite appealing to me. Like we've spoken about this already earlier today. I think it's definitely got a unique spot in the market.
yeah,
There aren't that many black and white films that have decently strong halation, especially like in 120. There are very
yeah,
few films
yeah.
available in 120 compared to 35 by and
And
large. If I had the opportunity, I would switch to a Leica M11 digital rangefinder and just shoot 120 for film. But most of the films you can buy aren't available in a medium format.
yeah, and I think for me this is because obviously there's like the bulk of my stuff at this stage, my personal stuff anyway, is 120, and I'm using the GW 690. I'm getting 8 shots per roll.
Yeah,
Uh, so it's you kind of, as much as you go, it's about the art and I have to get the image and all that kind of stuff. The price of this for a 120 roll a film is, I'm back to kind of looking at bricks of this stuff and kind of going, it's time to get a couple of bricks of this and see what dev I like with it and
yeah. And then
where
just
where it
dial
fit,
that in, get your
where
process
it
nailed
fits in,
down.
with my process, because the other stuff, foam pan 100 on the cheaper side of it, and
Hmm.
uh, Delta 100 on the dash riprock other end of it is what
Yeah.
I was tending to shoot with this stuff. So like the lower ISO was where I was going anyway, and I don't do the same amount of pushing and pulling of these films as you and other people do.
Hmm.
It's just not something I've kind of needed to do too much. But you know,
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like I'm
I'm
shooting 6 by 6. I'm getting 12 shots a roll.
yeah.
So for me, like you say, you want to get a good quality film and be able to get a good negative that you can get a nice scan or a solid print out of. But especially in 120, I am more likely to go for a Kentmere film than I am for anything else, just because the quality is mostly there, and especially with the larger negatives, you're still getting a tremendous amount of information.
Mhm.
It's that same underlying idea as why Fomapan 100 is so popular in large formats,
Yes,
because
yeah.
Fomapan 100, it's not the highest spec emulsion on earth, but when your sheet is 8 by 10 inches instead of an inch by an inch and a half for 35 mil, you're capturing a huge amount of detail either way.
It's a big difference. I see
Yeah,
Stefan's saying there never found a definitive best developer for Kentmere 100. My take on this is with all of these things, you're kind of there is no there's find your developer
yeah,
for your film. So the only thing I've developed my Kenmare 200 in so far is 510 Pyro because I forgot to get a bottle of the only reference I had for this was Alex.
yeah.
And he said, "Oh, yeah, DDX," and it looked good. And I kind of went, "Well, I don't have any DDX." And I was literally in John Gunn's behind the
Yeah,
counter
you were
and
doing a
meant to
photo
get
shoot, being
DDX.
too
And I went,
dramatic to
"Fine."
actually go and buy something.
Uh, and I actually forgot to get a bottle of it and then got home and kind of went, well, 510 Pyro it is. Looks really good in 510 Pyro. I meant to bring in my sheet and eggs from the darkroom to show people, but it looks good in 510.
Yeah.
Very, very little grain. And people that are really into the technical side of it, 9 minutes in a rotary.
Mm,
Um, 9 minutes at 1 to 100 in a rotary. So there's a very cheap film dev combo for you.
definitely,
And
yeah.
I
And your
found with
negatives look
that,
really good.
the negs are good, and a huge amount of I just not I this isn't the ideal scenario to show this, but that's a portrait I took. It's obviously toned, which is why it's that color. But I just wanted to show this is a black jacket. This was indoors, and this is a crop. So this is a 6'9" neg, and I have his full body, and I've cropped in just because I liked this.
And
And
it's
I have
backlit, don't forget that.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's so I metered off his jacket, but I have a huge amount of just texture and detail in the shadows in the jacket. And I think with Kentmere 400 that I was used to shooting, it was always a thing of like your shadows would be absolutely crushed out of it.
Yeah,
And that's a darkroom print, so I haven't scanned my 120 legs. They're all just darkroom prints,
yeah,
and it's printing really nice in the darkroom. Now, not
definitely.
I done contact sheets and I've made maybe 4 or 5 prints, um, and I'm really happy with them. Uh,
Yeah, and I've made two
as I
prints with help from you, and I was very
yeah,
happy with both of them as well. Well,
yeah,
one of them not so much. It needed a bit more work. To the one on the subway, the tube, it needed a bit more work.
yes,
But the architectural one was absolutely gorgeous. And I can't remember if I told you, but I realized after we did those prints that we actually had the negative the wrong way around, because there's a number 5 on one of the walls in that picture, and that number 5 is actually backwards in reality. I noticed when I zoomed in on the middle of the print, I was checking it with a loop,
yeah.
and the train signs are backwards. So we flipped the neg the wrong way around. But anyway, even then, it still
Yeah.
printed amazingly
But
well. And the
but
grain,
we
like
we
it is fine.
we seen that because I was looking at the 5 and I kind of went, no, sure, because I know what way up a negative should go in the larger, and I was like, there's something wrong here. But I was like, look, I'm not gonna, we'll just flip it. It's fine. We're
Yeah,
both very tired. Uh,
yeah,
but yeah, so
yeah.
um,
There was
eh,
another
ex
question there. Owen asked if this has a place compared to Kentmere Pan 100. I'd say absolutely. If you don't mind a bit of halation in your images, which you're probably not completely opposed to if you're shooting film, um, it's almost the same kind of level of grain as Kentmere Pan 100. It is a bit grainier, but if you imagine a scale from 100 to 400, it sits around the 150, 160 mark on that kind of scale. It's less grainy than halfway between Kentmere 100 and 400. So I was quite impressed in that regard.
yeah,
And that's kind of what I was just
and
saying about the printing. We struggled to find the grain with the grain
yeah,
focuser
yeah,
because it was just
yeah.
that good.
It was too fine.
Yeah.
I had the same I had the same issue, but with the 6x9, it was a bit. I mean, I'm holding a loop on a zip on a jacket, so I can kind of go, yeah, that's. I had easier things to kind of look at it against, but on the 35, it was very difficult. Which is nice, you know.
Hmm. Yeah. Rory, do we have any
Rory
sample
straight in with the
non-test
pushing.
images at 800? No. So have fun.
Yeah, there's some
Um,
homework for you, Rory.
yeah, definitely. What would you like to do next with Kentmere Pan 200? Will you be shooting anything at the gathering next weekend?
Oh, oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I've that's all I have left of it, so we have to see if I can sort that out before the weekend. But yeah, definitely. I'm going to because there's a lot of kind of hills around that place, and you have the Copper Coast, and I think the
Yeah.
100 speed means I might get my fluffy water and rock stuff.
Hmm.
Easy enough without kind of worrying about ND filters and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm confident enough that I can shoot it Devid in 510 pyro, and I'm going to repeat what I done last weekend, which is, I'm sort of happy enough with it, you know. But I'll play
Yeah.
it. Like if it's any of these films, like I've now kind of went, yeah, it works with 510 pyro. I need to get into the habit of testing these properly again because I've gotten very
Yeah.
lazy around these things. And I was already
Well, you're
having to
very busy.
revisit everything with the Ago or
Mm.
the vintage visual
Yeah.
that because my development times are all kind of arseways at the moment again. They're
Yeah.
okay, but
And
it's
actually, if we're talking about rotary development, there's something hopefully coming my way soon that, if you have any color film that's not urgent, leave it with me.
yep,
That's all I'll say on stream
it,
for now, but
that,
something fun,
that, that'll do. I'll just show you what I meant about with the glow. That's
please.
wild garlic. Again, that's a darkroom print, and it's on gloss paper. So it's a dreadful way to try and show it, but you can see
Hmm.
where it's kind of the light just kind of coming back off them is. I think that's the lack of anti-halation layer has just made that very
Yeah, and those are very
dreamy,
high
you know.
contrast edges because it's pretty much dark under the
Yeah,
wildflowers themselves. Yeah,
yeah.
so you're going to
It
see
just
that
it
glow
just had
quite a bit more.
that was like one. I think that was 1/15 of a second. It was handheld, but again,
Okay.
massive negative. So,
See,
and the RB
yeah,
67, which is fun to handhold at any
yeah, it's
any
got
stage. So
about
yeah,
as much inertia as a small car, so it's not going to move too quickly.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Something I want to play with at the gathering, if I do bring this, and I'm still not completely convinced, is to shoot some panoramics with it with the X-Pan. I think it'd be quite
yeah,
nice. And play around with the exposure a little bit, get a better feel for the latitude. I did my bracketing when I did my test. It's a black and white negative film, so it's got good
yeah.
latitude, but I want to see how much I can kind of not push and pull, but over and underexpose on the same roll and see how that goes from there, especially
Well,
with
do you
overexposure, see
know
how much glow I get with it.
this is one of these things where because I started tipping into using a bit of D23 again for some of my
Hmm.
development. So that kind of the two bat side of it, this kind of compensating developer.
Yeah.
See, this is where the laziness comes in. I want to try it with some of the two bat stuff, particularly say the stuff I shot on the RB and Hope, because I
Yeah.
was out in full sun in the basketball court, and then I was halfway up the hill in garlic groves and all that kind of stuff. So a very broad range of stuff. And I think the compensating developer is probably for something like that, where you kind of, the very dynamic range of what you've shot
Within
on a walk,
the
as
same
opposed to,
roll.
yeah, I'm going out to just shoot this.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was out for
Yeah,
a
because if
wander.
you shoot a very high contrast scene for the whole roll, you can use a very low contrast development
Yeah,
method. Or if you shoot a very flat scene, you could opt for a very high contrast method. But when you have such a broad range, you're going to want something that can kind of rein everything in without going too flat at the same time. So yeah, that makes sense. Mm.
exactly. And again, Owen is there saying about the Raleigh Super Pan. Yeah, I'd agree with that. It has that vibe. It's at a lower price point than Super Pan though.
It's a
So
couple of euros cheaper. Yeah,
yeah,
I think it's about six
and
euros
and
50, £5 20, something like
and
that.
and the big one for me so far is the curly nature of the 120 negs. I found these very easy to get into the enlarger
Hmm.
printing. Some of the Raleigh stuff, and I love the Raleigh stuff. but it's you're fighting this thing to try and get it into the carrier, and then you're having this big concern about squishing the negative and scratching it. This
Yeah,
lay
so that's
flat.
a good point. They're very easy to scratch. They curl a lot, and the base is very thin, so it can be hard to get onto your reels if they're not very clean. The
Yeah,
Kentmere base is a bit thicker, so it's a bit more easy mechanically to handle.
and
Yeah, that's another good
I
point.
I would imagine if you're scanning it on the flatbed side of things, it might be a bit
Oh yeah,
easier
when I did the
deal with
batch of
that.
scanning I did the other night with the rolls from Scotland in the Yashica mat and Fabrizio's Mamiya 6 that I was borrowing, it was a mix of Foma Ortho 400, which is incredibly curly and very, very thin. The Rollei Superpan 200, or Avifod 200, they're all the same film, which is it's more curly but less thin, I think. And then the Kentmere Pan 200 and one
Mm.
roll of Delta 3200, and you can really feel the difference. It's a lot easier just to handle. Even things for me like when I'm using it's right here, my Valoy 360 setup, when I feed the film through here, a very curly film will actually curl back in and try and jam itself back up
Oh God.
in these
Okay.
rollers. So then I'm constantly like with one hand trying to hit the remote to fire the shutter, with another hand making sure the film feeds in easily, and then like putting the remote in my mouth so I can grab the film coming out to make sure it doesn't loop back in and scratch and jam itself up in the rollers and all that
Yeah.
nonsense.
I
So
I
not
I
having to do
I'm
things
gonna
like that's quite nice.
I'm gonna stick with the darkroom side for that then. That's
That's fine
you're
as long
not
as you
you're
don't
not
keep
selling
letting me use
scanning
yours.
this. You're not selling scanning this. I remain grateful for you scanning my film. Thank you. Um, yeah. So I don't know. Yeah. Um, uh,
Pop says woo,
uh,
all caps as usual. So hi
yeah.
Pop.
Yeah. There you go. How do you feel about your name all over the marketing stuff? Just as a aside, that I
Oh
mean I'm seeing this everywhere today, which is great.
yeah,
Um, well
it's
done.
um it's
That's nice.
thank
You
you.
know,
It's flattering. I
I
don't
mean
like
the
to try and
photos
show
are
off a
good
lot with
as
this
well.
kind of thing. That helps. I got a lot of nice pictures with this stuff. When I have tight deadlines and reasonably high pressure and I just go and take pictures, I tend to take my best pictures. Things like even the Pentax X Ilford photo walk at the photography show. We were meant to shoot the 24 exposure roll of XP2 they gave us. I didn't. I just unwound the Kentmere that I was shooting in one of my other cameras and then reloaded it. And then I was sitting there at the start of the walk when Jan was introducing us all and making sure everyone knew how to use a Pentax 17. I had my hand over the lens, just firing it like 70, 60 odd times to get
Yeah.
back up to the end of the roll. Um, yeah, I
Yeah,
tend
and
to
they're
just
looking at you
do
going,
that.
you're doing it wrong.
Think you're
Uh,
wasting your film. It's like, no, I know what I'm doing, but I
yeah.
can't tell you. Yeah. It's nice because, I put a lot of effort into this kind of stuff and the stuff I do is very
Yes.
dense.
Yeah.
It's not very casual
Yeah.
content, so to
Yeah.
speak. It's never going to have a super broad audience,
Yep.
like you've said before, to be an inch wide but a mile deep.
Yep.
And that's the kind of
Yeah.
stuff I talk about.
Yeah.
The vast majority of people don't care how the grain compares to Eastman's double X 5222 or care that it's a cubic grain film, that kind of thing, or what the base material is made of. Is it acetate polyester? It's got a base. That's all that matters. There's a
You,
film in the can.
you're
Um,
you're you're making I mean at the risk of giving you too many compliments here, but you're making more interesting videos by doing that. You're not just kind of going, yeah, I went and shot this. I went and shot this.
okay. Well, if
It's
I'll
good.
take the cynical version of that, which is to say that I don't have the personality to drive that kind of content, so I have to rely on technical
You're doing all
nonsense.
right.
But I've had some
Um,
very good feedback from it, and it's nice to see my
yeah,
name pop up
yeah,
everywhere and be
good.
tagged in so many different posts and whatever. And even people, I saw one person commented on my YouTube video quite early on to say they got an email about the announcement, I presume a newsletter from Ilford or some supplier, um, to say that when they saw that, the first thing they went to do was go to YouTube to see my video because they presumed I had one and they were happy to see it there. So,
Very good. Yeah,
this all
yeah, yeah.
goes back to what I was talking about when I was in Germany for the gallery for Jason Kummerfeld last July. There were a couple of people who came up to me specifically, and like that was not something I was really used to or comfortable with, and
Yeah.
it's it's still something I don't
Yeah.
respond super well to. If someone approaches me and like likes my content or whatever, I'm just like, thanks.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. Not all people suffering with imposter syndrome or imposters, Alex, I think is the takeaway from that. Some people do actually deserve it. The any more thoughts on this film? I think it's great. I think there's actually a little bit more excited about this than the color stuff, to be perfectly honest with you. But that's me. I shoot
I
more
can see
black and
that for a
white
lot
than
of
color.
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when the first kind of pre-release access I ever had anything was actually a Kentmere film, which was Kentmere Pan 100 in 120 when those were eventually released in like November 22, December 22,
Mm.
something like that. And in that video, which I look back on now, having trying to write this one, and I cringe at the state of the thing, was that I thought for medium format, it was much more appealing than FP4 for a lot of use cases, especially given the price difference. And
Yeah.
now I mostly shoot Kentmere Pan 400 when I'm shooting medium format because I want the to stop down a bit more. F16 isn't a super narrow aperture in 120, so I
Mm.
like to have the extra speed. But I don't want it all the time, and 400, it's a bit grainy. This is a lot more appealing.
Mm.
35 mil,
Mm.
it's a very nice film, and the halation is more prominent in 35 mil. I really like it, and I do still want to buy a bulk roll, as I said earlier, in my video and to you. And the second I can get my hands on one, I'm going to buy it. But in 120, this is much more appealing to me because it's got a lot more versatility than 100, but higher image quality than 400, and I love halation. So for me, that's
Yeah.
not a con. For some people, it might be, but it's not that pronounced. And what about
Yeah.
you? Is there anything else that really stands out
Well,
about it?
I think it's that similar kind of thing. I think for what I'm doing, um, it's it's probably going to replace Fomapan 100 for me.
Mm,
I didn't,
definitely.
I never really shot a whole pile of Foma 200, so it's not like that thing of like it's going head to. I've seen a bit of that kind of rhetoric today. It's going head to head with this. They're different films.
Yeah,
They've a very different look. Because I think Fomapan 200 is a very good attempt at a T grain film that 90% of people develop badly. And they don't really get the
yeah,
full benefit of what they're trying to achieve with it. And
yeah.
I would
The sad
include myself in this
reality
because
with Fomapan 200 is a lot of people buy it because it's cheap and it's the middle of the lineup, and then they develop it in Rodinal, which is not the best choice
yeah,
for
wh-
a budget film or for a tabular grain film,
where
and they just do that because it's a cheap combination, and they end up with results they don't like.
yeah, I haven't seen a whole pile of it yet, but I think if people are just lashing this Kentmere 200 through Rodnall, I think it'll be very interesting to see are they retaining some of that grain. So if we kind of go back to one of the conversations we had with I think it was Laura last weekend where she's saying she needs more of the contrast, but she
Yeah,
had
and you were
Rodnall, and
talking
I'm
about
kind of I
shaking it.
I'm now thinking I would have liked to have seen more stuff in Rodinal just to see how it, instead of
Yeah,
running out and getting your HC110s and all of these. But we'll see that over the coming weeks because people
well,
have
that's the thing about
Rodinal
the
and they
first
have,
impressions. You can only
yeah,
give your first impressions, but we have
yeah,
the
yeah,
next number of
yeah,
decades to try it out in every other
yeah,
developer imaginable, and diafine and Rodinal and Caffeinol and everything else.
yeah,
The other thing, just to add on to that, why I'm more willing to go with 200 than 400 nowadays, I have to admit, is because I'm shooting a lot with the Ashika, or
yeah,
when I was borrowing Fabrizio's Mamiya 6 MF in Scotland, I did have those videos where I partnered with Godox and they sent me a bunch of flashes. I have flashes to fit every camera in every situation now. So light isn't as scarce as it used to be. And
yeah.
all but one of my medium format cameras have a leaf shutter, excluding the pinhole, but that doesn't count as a camera,
Yes, yeah,
in this kind
yeah,
of context. The Rolleiflex has a focal plane shutter, but that has f2.8 lenses. So it's easier to manage without a flash.
yeah.
So,
The
um,
the the portrait I took of Nicholas was
mm,
indoors at that street photography festival. I wouldn't have been able to take that with a 100 speed film because I was already down to I think a 15th of a second with that. Um,
yeah.
indoor and fine. I mean, it's a massive neg. You get away with
Yeah,
it,
but also
but
it's a leaf shutter
uh,
camera, so you don't
yeah,
have the giant mirror slab kicking you in the face.
yeah, yeah. But you are kind of flinching, waiting to hear it rip anyway. So
Yeah,
Um,
but yeah, if
yeah,
there are any other questions,
Rory
I
leaning
think
into
we're
the emulsion defects. You're right, Rory. That it might be it might be an appeal for you for the Fomapan. You don't know what you're going to get, but um, like yeah. So we'll see. What one of the companies would have a tendency to be more upfront when they actually find minor defects about stuff. But
Mhm.
one of the companies would definitely have better quality control. I'm not going to mention which is which in that case, for a variety of reasons,
Mm.
but you can
Okay.
do your own research around that.
I
Um,
think you can tell people that they can check it themselves.
yeah, yeah. Definitely. I mean, all of these things, particularly the 120 film, don't buy bricks and bricks of this stuff with a view to keeping it for the next 3 or 4 years. The 120 film, no matter who manufactures it, doesn't keep as well as the 35 mil. So if you're just going to
Yeah, just
buy
because
it
of the
and throw it in
nature
a
of the
drawer,
backing paper. Yeah.
you're going to see mottling. But I know the roll I'm looking at has March 27 on it. Like that gives me,
Oh,
that's plenty
your
of time.
boxes have stuff written on them.
Yeah.
Mine don't.
Ooh, there's a flex.
Yeah, a little bit. That's what you get for complimenting me. You blow up my ego. But yeah, if
Yeah,
anyone else has any other questions about Kentmere Pan 200, you've got a couple more minutes before we wrap up. But this is a very exciting release. It's not just filling a hole in the lineup. That's the point that I want to make more than anything. There was that 100 to 400, that range with a gap in the middle.
mm,
And there's a very obvious comparison to the Fomapan lineup. If you go onto B&H or Photo Impex or whatever and sort by lowest price, you're going to see that Kentmere didn't have a 200 speed film, and now
mm.
they do. But it is more than just that. Again, especially with the halation, and especially in 120, where I think
Yeah,
it's much more appealing. But it's
I
also,
it's
again, going to be available in bulk rolls, which is
yeah,
something I really like.
it's something different. Like
Yeah.
there's a tonality to it. There's a bit more of a depth to the shadows. There's the glow. So it isn't just filling that two, 200 speed hole. Because I mean,
There we go.
Jesus, it's like the thing of like we fixed the problem that you didn't even know we had.
Mm.
So it's like as I was using it last weekend, I kind of went, oh yeah, this is actually, all right. An RB67 is never going to be my everyday carry, but I enjoyed a wander around the woods with it, and I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not bringing a tripod as well as this thing, so
Yeah.
um,
Absolutely. Tom Douglas asks, may have mentioned it before, but how prominent is the glow? Are we talking any light source, or is it something you have to intend? No, you're not going to see it with any old light source. In a lot of my daytime shots, you don't really see it. You see it in specular highlights on a car. Nighttime, you're going to see a lot of it around like light bulbs hanging on strings, that kind of thing. In which case, it's quite similar to Kodak's XX, where with the really, really small light sources, you'll get full-on circles rather than just a smeary disc. But otherwise, it's more just like that little bit of a glow, like there would have a glow in a daylight shot, that white to black high contrast edge just around my head, but just a little bit. It is a bit more prominent in 35 mil because halation is a
there,
physical phenomenon than you'll see in 120. But no, it's not that bad.
there's one of my images doing the rounds today, and it's reflections of a window in Charlemont Square
Mm,
up at high level. So the
mm,
squares, which is the reflection of the sun onto the adjacent building, is like these square, glowy squares. I love it. And then I done a little bit of kind of nighttime stuff where the halogen lights in the dart station, and that's
mm.
like and that's a little bit like what are you seeing that on? Is that the double X,
Eastman double X, yeah.
yeah, the Eastman double X, where you're seeing that, and I mean it doesn't detract from it. It looks really good.
Yeah, I have a couple of pictures
Yeah,
where it is quite prominent, but that's stuff like the lights on London Bridge or Tower Bridge at night are very, very prominent. They're very bright because it's a big tourist attraction. And I was shooting at night at like 2 in the morning. So you're going to see a bit more pronounced halation there. But by and large, it's very tasteful. You look at this portrait of Angie here,
yeah.
Brendan's
So
printed, it's
so
not
the
that strong.
specular highlights on her Raleigh here. I don't know if you can see that, but
Lift it up a little
you'll
bit
see
higher.
here
Yeah.
where the sunlight is hitting the
On
metalwork
the
on
the
the
focusing knob. Yeah.
yeah, and you're getting this gorgeous little thing. So to me, when I was looking at this, it's almost like kind of catch lights in oh, if you're doing
Yeah. Like these
studio
catch lights
portraits
right
and
here.
you've yes, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it's like that. It's
Um,
mostly very tasteful and relatively gentle. The high contrast night scenes with strong, distinct light sources are where it's going to be a lot stronger. Daytime or very dim scenes, it's not going to be something that's going to overshadow things. Again, it's a lot less than something like FOMA Ortho 400.
Yeah.
But in lieu of any further questions, and with the mind that I need to have a shower and go to bed relatively soon, I've had a long day. I'll ask you, Brendan, what would you like to see next in, say, the black and white Ilford Kentmere lineup? Is there anything you would like to see? So, there's this idea that Kentmere Pan 200 is filling a hole that some people see didn't need to be filled. I don't agree with that, but I understand their perspective. Is there a hole that you see in the lineup that you
Yeah.
wish they would fill?
I mean, we can't keep asking them for Ortho 320, can we?
I can.
Yeah.
I want to see
So
Ilford Ortho
it's
320
like,
plus. If FOMA
look,
can make a 400 speed ortho film, Ilford can do it probably quite a bit better for
yeah,
not too much more money
it's
and give
it's
us no anti-halation layer as well.
it's like hear me out. You'll sell at least two rolls of it, one to Alex, one to Brendan. I don't know. I like there like I didn't really see a need for this until I shot it, and now it's like, yeah, I'll
Yeah,
be shooting more of this. Like that,
yeah,
it's really weird. Like I would have when I knew that this is the super secret product that was being released, I kind of I beg your pardon. Has
yeah,
somebody made a mistake here? Um, so yeah.
yeah.
So I
I
don't
do. That
know
would be my
what
personal
I mean.
choice as
Yeah,
well.
I'll do my usual joke of I'd like to see it in 4 by 5, but that's not the market they're going for with this. There's no
No, it's
uh,
not.
like even
The
the
other
fact that
thing I
it's
would like to
in the bulk rolls is a bit like that's I suppose student market or people doing the short what you call them short rolls
short
to short ends
roles, yeah, or like
for
community dark
for
rooms, that
testing
kind of thing
stuff.
for
Yeah,
people with
yeah,
school stuff. Yeah.
yeah.
The other thing I'd like to see that I think would be more popular and easier to justify and rationalize would be a not necessarily even if it were a lower ISO, a higher sensitivity in terms of spectral sensitivity SFX film. Give us a more infrared
Mm,
film. SFX isn't that IR sensitive, and there are so many problems with the Rolei IR films
yeah,
under the various names it's sold under that people have. That's something I would really like to see Ilford to come out with.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
would personally prefer the Ortho 320, mostly because I've been pushing it for like 2.5 years now.
yes, yeah.
But I do think an SFX Plus or
Well,
whatever
you
would
see,
do really, really well.
I think that's a really interesting thing because like I've used SFX as a 200 speed portrait film, not with the IR. I
Yeah.
just like it as a film for portraits. I think it's nice for skin tones, and it's kind of
Hmm.
the fine grain and large as well. Um, so it's like when I seen the Kentmere 200 thing, it's like, well, you already have a 200 speed black and white film with SFX, but price point, it's
Well, it's
I
substantially
like
more than the Kentmere
yeah,
films.
yeah,
Yeah.
I like having the option of kind of doing both, or playing about with it as an IR. But
Yeah.
like they've ticked all the boxes for me. Like just the fact that they see that it's worth putting time, effort, energy, and money into producing this sort of stuff. Because like the big fear is that people are shooting less and less of this. Now I know, as somebody who's printed this in the darkroom, that there's probably a handful of people so far have printed this in the darkroom by the the nature of the way things are gone, that
Hmm.
80 or 90% of this is going to be scanned. It seems to scan very well.
It
But
does. Yeah.
it's definitely a nice one for your enlargements. Like it's really nice.
Absolutely. And I did
I
make my very snarky comment in my video saying, that you can definitely print this 11 by 14, no problem,
yeah.
probably 16 by 20. And I said, like, if you think you need more than that out of a €6 roll of film, you don't. And that's the reality of it.
Like I think you'd be going up to 16 by 20 with this, because you're thinking, when am I going to see the grain? I want to see grain, which is why you would
Yeah.
go like deliberately this big. Now just for time reasons as much as anything else, I've only done 8 by 10s, and I'm using a 6 by 9 neg for some of them, which is like it's not really
Yeah.
an
It's
enlargement.
barely a 2.5x
Uh,
enlargement.
like
Yeah.
like the contact prints are gorgeous. Like they're lovely. So
Yeah.
I'll try printing some of the 35 at the weekend when I've a bit more time and energy. But
Yeah. And
you
maybe
want to
if I
go to
shoot more
bed.
at the gathering, we can have a go.
Yeah, you want to go to bed, and I've been to Galway and back already today, so I'm already done. For our foreign viewers, that's either side of the island. It's making Ireland sound bigger than it is. Um,
Yeah.
so unless there's
So
any last questions, we'll wrap it up there, I think.
yeah, that seems fair.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for your time. It was
Yeah.
great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you everyone for coming. See you, Brendan.
If you don't already, follow me on Instagram at shaka1277 for new pictures every day. If you liked this video and enjoy what I do on the channel, please consider subscribing or checking out my Patreon, where the tiers start at just €1 per month.